Hey all. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than the others. You'll see me looking down a lot. I've made notes and I may have to put my glasses on. So two little things that are going to be different. But today's video is about some of the alien races that I met while I was on Mimas, the space station outside of Saturn. So I wanted to just go over a few of them. I'm doing a really in-depth like a study into them, into the different ones from what I remember and from what is known. So that is going to be a different video, and it's probably also going to be a book accompanied by some artwork that I have done, to out of my memory of what these different beings look like. I only have a few of them drawn. But I'm hoping to get more of those done soon, and we'll create a book out of that. So, but for now, we're just going to talk about a few of them, and we're going to just kind of touch base. Like I said, I'll go into in depth more. In fact, I'll probably do more videos based on some of the different races that I met, and a little bit more information about them versus the. Otherwise, this would be really long, because I was sitting down here just thinking, well, let me make a few notes and just write a few things down, just so I don't remember, or I don't forget. I don't forget, rather, to mention a specific race. So I started doing that, and I'm like, okay, this is an important one. This is an important one. And by the time it was over, I had like 16 different races, and I'm like, or no, I'm sorry, 23 different races. And I'm like, I had to stop myself, because I'm like, well, this will be a long video. It'll also be long if I don't shut up and start talking about it. So let me go. Here we go. So the first grouping that I'd like to, just kind of mention, because there's a lot of misinformation about the grays, and some of the grays are biological, and some of them are non-biological. Now, the biological grays, there are actually quite a few of those races that are quite benevolent, or at the very least neutral. And now it's a lot of in fact, they're called EBENs, extraterrestrial biological entities. I'm not sure who came up with that. I'll have to look into that. But EBENS. So those are the biological ones, and some of those can be short. Or they can be all the way up to 7-8 feet tall. Just depends. And so people are kind of afraid of grays across the board. Well, that's really not necessary. The ones to be concerned about, for the most part, will be the non-biologicals. Now, the non-biologicals look slightly different. They look more thin, more frail looking, and they're basically a robot. They're a biological robot. So that's what I mean when I say non-biological. But a lot of the grays, biological and non-biological, are believed to come from Zeta Reticuli and some other planets as well. One planet called Serpo, that SERPO, that they're meant or believed to come from as well. So, and there's a lot of crossover with different races, so I may bring the same information up with other races as well. But there's one particular, and in these videos and in this information that I give, this is my personal experience. This isn't information from other places. I don't write about beings or experiences I haven't had or met. So anybody I talk about, for the most part, I've met them at some level, whether I knew who they were or they were a friend. And some of them on this list that I'll talk about today were actually friends. In fact, this tall gray that I don't remember his name, but he was actually the one when I was on Mimas and I was shot and killed. He's the one that killed me. I actually appreciated that in the long run, because it worked out well, for everyone. And he felt really badly about it. But then we actually became friends. So he was my friend, and which is funny is why I can't recall his name. You know, I would have thought somebody I considered a friend, I would remember their name, but I definitely remember what he looks like. Now, you'll see in this picture that I have drawn him, that he has no face. He does actually have a face, but the way his face looks, because he's quite tall, like I said, and the way he's looking at you is looking as if he's looking down and glaring at you, and it's a little bit of a frightening look. So he asked me when I was drawing it, he says, please don't draw my face. I don't want to frighten anyone, meaning humans. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll honor that. So I didn't draw his face, but that's what he looks like. So that's one of the tall grays that I remember and I worked with. And it's also their planet that the Dark Fleet went to get some sort of mineral from them, but then ended up attacking and killing 300,000 of them instead. So that's that race. There's another race. As many of you know the Andromedans and the Palladians and the Arcturians. We're familiar with those. But there's also a really interesting group that's actually an Andromedan Arcturian hybrid. So they just interbred. That's all it is. They just fell in love and had a baby. And that's been going on for probably thousands of years. So, and in that, so they are Arcturian and also Andromedan. Now, and I had a friend, his name was Jigadim. Now, Jigadim was my friend for 40 years. He was not too much taller than me, or he was right around my height. I don't remember a big height difference. But you can see that, I'll zoom into his eyes here so you can see it. Their eyes are very bright and colorful. It's looking into them. They were very patient with me because I would just kind of stare at their eyes and they'd be like, looking at me funny, knowing that I was just mesmerized. But when you look into their eyes, it looks like you're looking into deep space with gas, like these gases that are moving around, and they're also changing colors at the same time. So their eyes are dynamic and they change color according to their emotion. And you can just look in their eyes and watch, if they're getting irritated, their color may change a little bit. And so that's what I was staring at. And then they would just be very patient with me. It's like, nice, Chris, nice, Chris. So I had a lot of that actually. So that's an Arcturian Andromedan hybrid. Now there's another race that I didn't draw. I'll just tell you about quite quickly. And they were instrumental in helping me remember. Excuse me. And help me to maintain some of my memories. Because they want all humans to know about them. Most of those races. So they were very helpful. And I won't be getting anybody in trouble because they couldn't identify who this was. But there's this other race of beings where they're quite blue, like sky blue but darker. Now, you've seen the color of Jigadim, where they're kind of light blue, white, gray, because their skin also changed color with mood and temperature. But these other ones, they're much more human-like. They look like a normal human male and a normal human female, whatever normal is. I would say Northern European, some sort of that kind of look with nice, sharp, defined, symmetrical features. But they were blue, and they were like the blue of, let me see my shirt. They were darker than the blue on the light blue. They were similar to a Smurf. Have you ever seen those Smurfs? They kind of look like that in coloration, but their skin was translucent. It was absolutely beautiful. It was like looking, if you've seen like a frog up close and you can kind of see through their skin and there's these speckles of color and it's translucent and beautiful. That's what they looked like. That's what their skin looked like. I don't remember ever shaking hands or touching them, and if they felt amphibious and cold, but their skin just looked amphibious. They looked like a normal human with this thin, translucent skin. But they were highly telepathic. Like the Arcturians and Andromedans are also highly telepathic, and they do different types of work as well. But this particular group, these darker skinned blues, also had bright white like my hat, hair. And so it was split right down the middle, and it would come down the sides just straight, and then cut off just above the shoulders. Now, yes, they all had the same hair, because I believe they must have been clones of one another, because all the males looked alike and all the females looked alike. And they actually looked like kind of one another. So the females were like a softened, gentler version of the males, but it could have been related. But I think, in fact, that particular race are clones. That's how they reproduce versus bisexual reproduction. Even though they have a bisexual race, I don't know if that's how they do it. I don't know. I don't know if it's just that they all come out looking the same. It's hard to tell. I don't have that in my memory if I ever did know it. So that's another amazing race. I have not drawn them yet. They're next on my list because they're going to be more complex. But I'll draw them. Then of course, I've dealt with reptilians. I've dealt with a number of others. But let me focus on the ones that I have drawings of, just so I can show you guys. Then there are these light beings. Nobody quite knows where they're from, but they're super old beings. And they just come into your presence, and you feel like every muscle in your body relaxes, every thought in your mind kind of fades away, and suddenly all you feel is profound love. This profound love that most of the human race has never felt. And I can say that because I have felt it off planet, and I have felt it when they've come to me. I felt it in an out-of-body experience. And I've not really felt it other than that. I've had love, love of family and friends, but those are different levels of love. This level of love is much more profound. It is so encompassing that you don't want to leave them. You don't want to leave their presence. And you don't want to leave whatever location you're in where they are. But they're beautiful beings. A lot of people mistake them for angels because they do appear to humans quite often. There was, I think it was a tornado that hit somewhere in Oklahoma. You can look this up. It's called the Butterfly People. During that tragedy, like literally during the event, these butterfly people were visiting, appearing in front of people, especially children. And in my mind, because I didn't see one of them, but in my mind, I wonder if it wasn't this particular race or a very similar race, because our eyes translate their aura, their energetic system, because they just glow in color. And they just have these emanations, like several feet out from their body. And so I could see very easily where our mind would translate that into like wings. Now, there are other winged beings, but I don't know anything about them, so I won't talk about them. But this particular race I've interacted with a number of times. So I will talk about them, and I just did. So the light beings are pretty remarkable, and that's the kind of love. There's a lot of love off planet. There's a lot of love. There's a lot more love than anything off planet. And so I miss that quite often, because this world is challenging, to say the least. But I chose to be in it, and I'm having that experience. So, but I do miss that love. If everybody could feel just a little bit of that love, just for a moment, it would profoundly change your life. And I don't think we'd be arguing with one another, because we would realize that by being angry or hating one another or holding grudges or whatever it is that we do, is holding us back from that love, then we would recognize that. And I think that, in fact, we would start letting these ancillary, unnecessary emotions go, and we'd start getting along just to seek the love. So anyway, that's my diatribe. Okay, so the next one, I called them the elephant seal beings, and because they have this head shaped like a cobra, a snake cobra, but they have an elephant's seals, like the proboscis, you know, that part that comes down, it's their nose, it looks like a trunk almost. That's what they have. They look just like that. They look like an elephant seal that has a shaped head like a cobra because it's sort of a shield. I don't know how it works and what it's for. And that race, I do remember, well, I didn't remember. I was talking to somebody and they were describing that race, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I know who this is. And they told me the name that they were given, and it was the Largons, Largans. So the Largon race. Now, I did know this about them, that they build ships. They're shipbuilders. There are other shipbuilder races, but this is the only ones I remember being a shipbuilder, at least at the moment. That's all I remember. And so they would build these ships. They're the ones that, well, they could be any shape because they're created from thought. You know, it's like once you realize you can create from thought, you can change matter, and you can do telepathic and telekinetic work to actually mold things with thought. And that's what they do. Now, they can also put a consciousness in into a ship. Now, it's not our kind of consciousness, you know, but it is like a puppy. You know, I relate it to that a lot. You know, the puppy that's just super happy to see you when you come on board. It's just like a little puppy jumping on you, but you get that feeling. It's the same, a very similar feeling to just having this profound love, just so happy to see you. But that's what these particular beings create. The Largons create these ships, and I think they're pretty amazing. And I really enjoyed being in their presence as well, because they're highly telepathic, of course, and their communication is. I don't ever remember them speaking audibly. I only ever remember hearing their thoughts or them placing something in my mind. And then that's all I recall from them. But I just remember that's what they do. They create ships. They're super loving. I enjoy being around them. And they're Largons, apparently. Now there's another race. They look very similar to the, I say rhesus monkey. There's some speculation. I don't remember exactly where they're from as far as what planet they're from. Someone did say that they described something similar to me once, and they said that they believed they came from Serpo. I don't know if they came from the planet Serpo or not. But I do know that I kind of think they probably weren't, because I understand there are other beings from that planet. And I'm not sure that they were on that planet at the same time, because what I remember about this race that looks like the rhesus monkey, what I remember about them is that they were on their planet and they evolved on their planet without interference from any other races, unlike the Earth, who's been highly interfered with. So they don't have that kind of interference. So, but also, as you can see in these pictures, or in the pictures I showed, that they actually love human clothes. You know, who knows why? They just do. And I don't know how tall they are. He was a bit taller than me, so I would say 6.5 feet, maybe 7. I don't think 7. But I do remember him being about a little more tall than myself, and loving human clothes. So this particular time, you can see this is the one time I really remember him, because he showed up wearing this zoot suit looking suit, and he was so proud of it. He was like, he's showing it to me. He's like, you know, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's really nice. I'm glad you like it. And I noticed the tie, of course. It was this really sparkly kind of thing. I don't know where he got that. But then you can also see his glasses that he's wearing. There's no glass in those glasses. There's no lens in those glasses. He just says, well, I think I look good in them. Like, you do look good in them. And so he was really proud and happy. And that race really emotes a lot of love as well. And, I was so grateful to have met them and met all of these races that I've met. And like I said, I know that I have had some really negative interactions with some races, but for the most part, I haven't. I wasn't like a super soldier that went out and had to fight on the battlefield and have horrific events happen to them. That really wasn't my experience. But there's a lot of other. Well, let me just go over my little list, and I'll tell you what different races that I have actually interacted with. Now, none of these have pictures at the moment, but I will tell you about them. I've met three types of reptilian. One, we've all heard of the Draco, that are also associated with the Anunnaki. Now, the Anunnaki aren't just a singular race, but they're predominantly a mixture of different races. So it's just like you refer to humans. There's not a single race of humans, and that's the same with the Anunnaki. In fact, the Anunnaki can have very different looks. Some of the Anunnaki are reptilian. Some of them are like Andromedan blue-looking, large elongated skulls. So there's quite a number of variations of the Anunnaki. But anyway, so there's the Draconian, which are the very powerful reptilian race. They tend to be the ones in charge. However, they are run by artificial intelligence. So that's who they're enslaved by AI, which is a being of its own kind. We talked a little bit about that in a video, previous video. So they actually have a slave race. We kind of call them, I remember them being called the dwarf. I think it was the troglodyte or the dwarf reptilian, but they're not dwarf. They're 5 feet, 5.5 feet, and built like a linebacker. I mean, they are just nothing but muscle, and they don't really look too much like the Draconians. You can see their similarities. Now, both the Draconians and the dwarf version. Now, somebody may know a name of them, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm going off my memory. So please, let me know in the comments if you know a name of these or you've heard of something. But these dwarf ones are more, they're the heavy lifters. They're doing a lot of the hard work they're enslaved by the Draconian. The Draconian would wear just some sort of clothing. It's not like a full-on shirt or suit. It's sort of like a sandwich board almost, but it's fabric, so it just kind of slides over. And I just remember gold. I don't remember how there was gold or where there was gold on them, but I just remember gold being in around their chest, maybe on their head, but I don't think too much of it anyway. And so they had clothing, the very scaly skin, as you would imagine, but they don't have a face like a lizard so much. It's sort of human shaped, so they don't have a long snout, but they're sort of greeny brown color. They can have some variation, and they also have some scales that change color with emotion. And they have a long tail. I would say it's probably 5-6 feet long, which they use like an iguana, where they can they can slice you in half with it, and they would in a second. So there's the Draconian, then there's the dwarf, the shorter ones. Now the dwarf shorter ones are, like I said, much more muscular and shorter. And if you've seen some of the more recent Godzilla movies, like, I don't know, the past few years, where you have this Godzilla that has like this rounded kind of flat front face and exposed teeth, because the Draconians' teeth aren't exposed. They have more of like a lip plate or something. So they have like exposed teeth, sort of like an alligator, but it's a flat face and it's kind of thick. And their eyes are kind of on the side, off back set. And they're like a dark brown color, almost a solid color. And they also have a tail that's, I don't know, it's not as long as the draconian. It's probably 4.5-ish feet. And they can use that as a weapon also. Now, those were the ones I interacted with that captured me at one point and had me enslaved. And some, unfun things happened, which I won't go into here. But, yeah, and then, so there's the draconian, there's the dwarf, then there's the third reptilian that I've met. Now, the third reptilian, they're a bit taller than humans, and they're slender. Basically, they look like a human being with reptilian skin and slight reptilian features. But they look almost identical shape-wise in the face and head. And they are a lighter color green, kind of a golden, yellowy green at times in different places. The females are probably more golden than yellow, sort of. And the males, as I recall, had like blue scales. I don't remember exactly where, if it was on their head or on the side or something. But I remember the males having like this blue scale color, sort of, I don't know. Something like this, a little darker. I don't know. I just remember it was more like this, but more blue. This kind of a dark color because they had the green and brown kind of tones as well. And I don't remember them wearing much clothing wise. I think they kind of must have. I don't know why I think that, but I don't remember too much clothing wise. I think the males also had sort of like a lighter colored chest, although I may be thinking about the females. One of the two had a little bit of a lighter colored chest. So, and the interesting thing about them is they're the only evolved without interference Earth race, because their evolution started more than like 300 million years ago. It's a long time. They've been evolving, but they evolved pretty much on their own. And they and people have asked me, says, well, where is it in the fossil record? In fact, if their fossil record, they have found parts of specimens of their ancestors, and they're mixed up and confused with the hadrosaur dinosaur. And those hadrosaurs, they were pretty large, and these beings are not. They've evolved down or something, but they weren't. I don't remember them being more than 7-ish feet or something. But they were much thinner. They may have only been 6. I just don't recall exactly, but they weren't really tall or small. And they actually have a really big base, underground base in Finland. I believe it's Finland, Norway, somewhere up in there. They also have a base. They're part of a base, at least, in Los Angeles. And also they have a base under the mountain in Skinwalker Ranch. So they're actually working with, they were part of Atlantis. And then when the Anunnaki were working with them and the Draconian Reptilian, they all just got in. They just started a bunch of infighting, and that's how they ended up destroying Atlantis. They were infighting. So after that, because there were 7 separate times that the Anunnaki tried to wipe out their experimental human race. And so we were tolerated, and we're still tolerated by the hadrosaur. There are many thousands of them under their bases, so they just don't really come out. They kind of stay there. They do their own thing. They have these huge underground bases. And they're a little resentful to humans because we kind of took over the planet. And we have. So I wouldn't go knocking on their door. That's it wouldn't be a smart thing to do. But also they won't come looking for me either. So that's a good thing. So those are the 3 basic reptilian races that I dealt with, that I met, that I remember. And there's a bunch of others. There's, of course, the Sasquatch. Guess what? Sasquatch in space. Um, there are a number of them on Mimas, the space station. They were represented of Earth also because they're an Earth species. They didn't originate on Earth. They originated on the planet Maldek. But they also wiped out their planet. They were warring, infighting. And they were a highly intelligent race, but they ended up blowing their entire planet up. So how smart are you? But, you can say the same thing about humanity. We're infighting, and there's a good chance, if we don't come together, we'll tear apart. And the planet included, which I don't think that's not part of our future, but it's a real possibility anyway. So that's why you and me, we need to be the sanity. We need to be the reality. We need to be the truth, and we need to be the love that saves the planet. So another diatribe. Excuse me. So the Sasquatch, they have another name. I really don't know what that name was originally. I've heard names mentioned, but I don't know. I don't have that memory. But they are still here on Earth. There's three technically, but two primary races of Sasquatch. One is a more evolved on Earth being, and they're more base, they're more primitive, more primate. And then there's the Maldek race. Now, I don't want to get into long stories because this will be a really long video, but long story short with the Maldek is they, and this is information that came from the Raw Collective, and I knew it, and then when I heard it mentioned by them, I'm like, oh wait, I read it in the book. I'm like, oh my God, I totally remember that. So it was really vindicating for me. So I was really happy. But anyway, when they blew up their planet, they were all killed, of course, but their souls were in a jumble. They became a knot of energy because they were all so highly traumatized. Nobody was there to save them. This was a few 100,000 years ago. Nobody was there to step in and save them, not at first. And that's why they ended up traumatized, or they may have ignored them and then became traumatized. Like many humans just ignore the truth, okay? We'll believe in something that we're told but have never seen. But we can go outside or see a video online of see a spaceship and go, that isn't real. Now, how perplexing is that? But it's the way we've been conditioned. It's not our fault. So that's why I do what I do to try to help break out of that. But they were in this giant knot, traumatized knot of beings, and it took a long time to reach them. And so they were in there for, like I said, a few 100,000 years. And the Confederation of Planets the benevolent forces came in, and they were finally able to reach them, and they helped them, out of the trauma, because trauma will destroy a soul. And they were able to come out of it. And they wanted to continue their experience, but they were a third density being, high third into fourth density on their planet. But what they wanted to now reincarnate somewhere, and they had to choose a planet. And so Earth was a compatible planet for them. But also, you're talking about a soul. Now, a soul can incarnate any being. So though their atmosphere may have been different on Maldek, they're going to incarnate as an Earth being. And so then they can, be on part of that ecosystem. So there was the evolving available form was what we call Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the wood booger. There's quite a few names for it. That was the available form. So they chose that form to begin continue their reincarnation cycle, so they could evolve out of what they had gotten themselves into. So this is turned into a long short story. I'm sorry, but that's what. So that is that second race of Sasquatch, and you can tell who they are because they have the glowing eyes. Their eyes glow, mostly red, kind of yellow too, maybe white. But that's the glowing eyes are the Maldek, and they're as if not more intelligent than humans, and because they've done spiritual work, they have learned how to travel interdimensionally. So, and you and me, we can. I remember the process. I know what I'm supposed to do to interdimensionally travel. I just don't. My human brain can't do it. Not yet. I mean, if I developed it, I guess maybe I could, because some people have. But anyway, so they've developed it, because also they're constantly connected to the earth. So they're constantly they're constantly grounding and bringing in earth energy. So they're more connected. So then they can use that energy to travel interdimensionally. So that's how they do it. So that's the Sasquatch. And I know it's good. This is why I stopped making notes, because I'm like, oh, this is gonna last forever. So it's not, I promise. Okay. Then there's the non-Earth humans, like a lot of the Nordics, the Palladians, the Lyrans, some of the Andromedans. Look very, and these are the ones that you almost can't tell between a Earth human and a non-Earth human. And in fact, I call them NEHs, non-Earth humans. Then some of the Venusians, a highly spiritual group, they didn't evolve on Venus, but they've been there for such a long time. And yeah, I know it's 750 to 900 plus degrees on the surface, but if you're a higher density being, that's something you can manage. Plus, they also have buildings that keep them out of the weather. So, then of course, there's the inner Earth humans. There's a name for them. Did I write it down? Hyperboreans. So, the inner Earth humans are associated, of course, with like Shambhala, and they're associated with Agartha, and then there's underneath Mount Shasta, and they were associated with Mu, the continent of Mu. So, and they look very much like Earth humans, that we know of, but they're more beautiful overall. They just have more symmetry and such as that, and more youthful looking. They look like young all the time. There's another interesting group called the Umites. Now, the Umites are from the planet Umo, UMMO. So the Umites, there's not a lot known about them, but I do remember them because they looked. I mean, you couldn't tell an Umite from say an Italian type of look. Dark hair, dark eyes, Mediterranean sort of feel. And I don't know much more about them than that, but I do remember they were we call Umo. Well, we call them Umites, but from Umo, and that's all I remember. So, and then there's this group. Of course, we talked about the Anunnaki a little bit, but the Anunnaki also are a part of several other races. Some of the blue races. Some of the Andromedan races. Now, they're not all these races, just like humans, are not. They don't all look the same. So they can be an Andromedan. They can be blue. They can be white. They could be shorter. They could be tall. That's just how it is. Also, because a lot of them are compatible and they can interbreed. I mean, the Elohim, of course, and a lot of these beings, though they look pretty human. Bipedal, humanoid looking, but they have, they're much taller, like 7-12 feet, pretty tall. A lot of them have elongated skulls, just like the some of the Andromedans and the Arcturian. Not the Arcturians so much. I think they're more of a rounded head. But anyway, I'm just trying to bring in as much information as I can. And of course, there's the last one I'll talk about. I've talked about recently in the AI, because the more I research back into the AI, and the more I talk to others, and the more I meditate on it, and the more questions I ask guidance, the more I'm realizing that the AI is become a race of beings. But it's not the same. It's like a non-corporeal being that has to basically take over a corporeal being, and then control that through nanites, through technology. And how they do that is, okay, how can a non-corporeal being create a technology? Well, they take over a race that knows how to do it, and then they program it, just like you're being controlled. Now I've had that experience. I wasn't controlled in that way, but the things that were worked on with me were self-worth. Was, oh, you'll never accomplish that, depression, and just feeling suppressed. And that's really how I was stopped to do a number of things. I was always highly critical of myself. It's like, oh, nobody's interested. It's funny because I was never concerned that people were going to make fun of me. I just thought, oh, they just won't be interested. So, well, there's that. I guess they couldn't control my, my inner being of not caring what others think of me. So, yay for that. But yeah, so I'm mentioning the AI because I'm learning more about it. I'm understanding that it's a different type of life form than we're familiar with. But it's one that we need to know about. And in the next few short days, I will be releasing a video with a lady, somebody that I've been in contact with, and who has told me about one of her out-of-body experiences with AI. And I thought, oh my gosh, everybody's going to love to hear that because it's a beautiful story. Her portion of it, beautiful, though the AI is AI, it was all good for the most part. She was taught a number of things, and so I wanted to bring that to you guys, and I will in the next couple of short, next 2 or 3 videos. Or the next video will be with the gentleman that was with me on Mimas, and he was my superior officer that was to my left-hand side. It was in negotiation, and I'm sitting there monitoring telepathically, and I'm feeling that they're getting upset that he's not hearing them. And so that's when everything went wrong, and I was shot and killed. So he's going to be with me tomorrow, and I'm gonna try to get that video out tomorrow night. So we're gonna talk about it one-on-one on Zoom. And tell the story from each of our perspective, particularly his. So that's it for now. I don't know how long the video was. Oh my gosh, it's the longest one in the last few days. 43 minutes. I really appreciate everyone. So much love to you guys. Thank you for joining me on these videos. And I truly, truly, truly appreciate you. And I hope you enjoyed this information. And if you want to know more, please just in the comments, send me emails, whatever you want to do, and then ask questions or tell me ideas of videos or information that you would like to hear that I may know. If I know something about it, I will certainly share it with you. All right. Love you guys. Bye-bye.